one. What if the biggest breakthroughs in early childhood education aren't happening in the classrooms, but in the systems behind them? Today, we are joined with Dr. Krzanowski, who will share how bold partnerships and forward thinking leadership are changing the game for directors, staff, and the future of our field. Today's powerful episode of the Childcare Directors Chair, we're going to talk with this visionary leader behind the Early Childhood Innovation Center and explore how real change is happening in early childhood education, one strategic move at a time. She's going to share her journey from center director to workforce advocate and how her work in Delaware State University is helping solve real challenges that we're all facing as directors and educators today. So, help me welcome her to the show as we learn a little bit more about building career pathways to addressing awesome staffing solutions instead of these persistent problems that we're dealing with. And she will offer insight that every director needs to hear because, especially on a Monday, right? It's not Monday today, but oh, those Mondays, those call outs, and what are we going to do? All those things. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here, Erica. A big fan of the show, big fan of the people who listen to the show, and excited to get into our story.
So, why don't you tell folks a little bit a background about yourself before we like dig into all the work that you're doing? Tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. So I say that I fell into early childhood in the most unique and wonderful way. When it was time for me to decide to pick a career, I went to a local university here in Delaware. I wanted to be a teacher, so I thought. And at that time, a teacher meant working in the K-12 system. I had no idea about the early childhood work field, workforce, anything. And I'll say luck would have it, it didn't feel like that at the time, but as luck would have it, my advisor said, you don't have the grades to get into the teacher preparation program. And I thought, what do you mean I don't have the grades? And she said, you have to have a certain GPA to get into student teaching. And it crushed my world. And I thought to myself, well, what am I going to do? And she said, well, we have another option. You can still work with children. You could work in a nonprofit. You can go into administration. And there's this whole field of early childhood that you might want to explore. So flash forward, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in education, public policy, and I started my journey in early childhood as an infant toddler teacher, a preschool teacher, and then I wanted to cut my teeth on the most important and hardest job out there as a director. People have this aspiration of being directors, and they should, but they need to know it is the hardest job in the world because at times it's thankless. And you are balancing and juggling all of these things. But I did it and I loved it and it taught me a lot. I'm sure we'll get into that later. And then after spending time in the classroom and as an administrator, my true calling was to work in higher education and working with people who wanted to be teachers and who wanted to be directors. And that trajectory has taken me from the classroom to higher ed to state government. And now I'm back in higher ed running in a phenomenal program around scholarships to help our workforce obtain CDAs, associates, and bachelor's degrees. So a complete full circle moment, but I never forget my days in the classroom or being a director. I talk to many directors every day and I understand the shoes that they are walking in, and they are heavy. And it's truly a calling if you are a director. It's an amazing opportunity, but very, very hard.
Yeah, and you say full circle, and it's funny because a lot of my colleagues in the field, I'm a little on the older side. A lot of us do talk about like, hey, what are we going to do next? And a lot of us do talk about either going into higher ed, working out of college, or coaching, or or helping the next generation of teachers, sharing what we know and our experiences. So I think that it is just natural for teachers to evolve in that way. So I think a lot of the folks that are listening can resonate with your path. So tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about this amazing program that you are running with Delaware State University.
Great. Yes. So Again, I've been in the field for my entire professional life and almost didn't go into this field, as I shared before. But as fate would have it, you always find yourself in the right place at the right time. So, working as a teacher myself, working in a program, administering a program, trying to find qualified staff. I know this is a national issue, recruiting and retaining the workforce. And I always thought that if there was a system in place that would not only allow or support people getting credentials and degrees, but would remove all the other barriers that are in the way, transportation, technology, finding childcare that would allow you to go to classes at night, and then rewarding you and recognizing you for your work when it comes to financial incentives. I've always had this dream of building this program. And again, as luck would have it, I was working in the state government, and our governor, our former administration, had a goal of making a lot of really strong investments in early childhood. And during COVID, when everyone was running around trying to figure out what to do, our state ended up with a surplus of funding that they wanted to use for early childhood. We could have done anything. We could have put it in salary supplements. We could have put it into other programs, but our administration at the time said, "What's a bold idea?" And I said, "I've got a bold, innovative idea around a workforce center that is centered around supporting the early childhood workforce in ways that Delaware had never been able to do before." Flash forward a few years in the making, and we have the Early Childhood Innovation Center, which is housed at Delaware State University, which is important because being Delaware's only HBCU, it was a perfect fit for a lot of different reasons. The leadership of Delaware State University, and the population of providers that we were serving, 98% women and over 80% women of color. So being attached to an HBCU was a really essential part of building this program. And I would encourage everyone to go to our website and visit all the services that we do. But in a nutshell, we have taken away this barrier of finding tuition dollars. We've taken away a barrier of providing technology. Everyone gets a laptop. Everyone gets a stipend during their work to try to offset the cost of getting to school, finding, again, childcare that's safe and effective, books. We take care of all of that. And then at the end, once you've obtained your CDA, associate's, or bachelor's degree, there's financial incentives in place to keep you going. So that was important for us to recognize the hard work that people were doing in obtaining these credentials and degrees. We also, offer a robust career advisement program that really gets you on the right trajectory on where you want to go. And most of our programs provide you with a one-on-one coach. And this is someone that's going to work with you, whether you're working on your CDA, your associate's, or your bachelor's degree. We have a saying at the ECIC, we insist upon success. And for my team, that means we will do anything that we need to see you walk across that stage at graduation. And for many people in Delaware, the recognition, the incentives, the package that we've been able to provide under the ECIC is really breaking barriers. We've seen a huge increase in people who are interested in going back to school, staying in school, getting that degree. And I'll just end with, the research shows it. We know it anecdotally that teachers who have higher education, coaching, credentials, there is a direct impact in that classroom with the children and the families. So we've been able to, for over 2 years now, show that data that is increasing positive child outcomes. So we're just thrilled that we're able to do this finally in a time where it was make or break for us in Delaware.
Yeah. It that definitely sounds like quite an extraordinary and robust program. And I think that there's one part that I really love. You tie it to workforce, and when you mentioned the number of women that are in the field, when you think about how many of those women are actually they own their businesses. Most of these childcare centers are owned by women, as you mentioned, women of color. So I love that that investment is there. I think that is a great investment and a great way to give back to the community and make sure that the communities are thriving. So good job, Good job for that. And then thinking about the childcare too, because I can remember when I was in school, at that time I was recently divorced and my daughter was young. She was like 3. And so, it was a lot of juggling because I was working during the day and then, at night going to school. So, that's really well thought out. Yeah, very well thought out. So, what would you say really inspired you to create this program? Like, what was the thing that you're like, because you're like, I have the big idea. What inspired you to put that big idea like together? Like, because you were ready to
Just
go.
I was ready to go. I've been thinking about this. Again, you can't work within this field and not hear and live the experiences of the people going through it. So, being a director, hearing, I had many staff that wanted to go get their degree, but didn't have the means to do it, or they weren't set up in their own lives, the support wise, to be able to do it. They were single moms, or if they had a partner, they weren't really supportive of them going back to school. How would they pay for it? They would need technology. So just years and years of just hearing stories of, I want to do this, I want to advance myself. I remember being a director and having a really high flyer in my program, and she could do this job that I was doing. And she said, I want to be a director one day. And I said, well, we're going to help you do that. And the first thing you need to do is you need to get your degree. Let's start off with the CDA. Let's go to the
Hmm.
associates if you want to, or go right to the bachelor's. But we didn't have the mechanisms in place, years
Sure.
ago, that it was a seamless entry. So I remember seeing her, and she finally did it, but it was not without trials and tribulations, but she finally did it. But when the opportunity came, and when you're faced with this great potential project, you got to be ready. I tell people, you got to be ready for the jump, right? And what I mean is, you got to be ready to go from teacher to administrator. You got to be ready to go from administrator to professor. You got to be ready to go from here to there. So when presented with funding to do this, I said, this is it. We're going to break down the barriers. We're going to create a system that's aligned. We're going to recruit and retain people into this program, because at the end of the day, it's about the children. And if the children of Delaware have highly supported educators, compensated educators, and recognized educators, we all win. So the inspiration was there. It's been built over the years, but I was really committed, and my team is committed to making sure, if you want to get a CDA, associates, or bachelor's, we are there. Ride or die. We are there for you to make sure you do this. And when you fall off a little bit, when your life gets life in, right? And you fall
Mhm.
off track, we are there to help you. Maybe you need to take a break, but we're calling you every 3 months and we're saying, are you ready for the next semester? What do you need? So it was the inspiration of the real life experience, and then finding a team of people who are former directors, educators,
Mm.
coaches, right? This is also a great workforce effort too, that,
Yeah.
you can be a director for 10 or 15 or 20 years. And then we don't want to lose that information and that experience. We want you to share it with us. So the ECIC has also created all of these different types of roles and jobs within the field, which is very exciting for us here in Delaware too.
Yeah, it sounds very exciting over here in Rhode Island. Let me ask you a question because in my experience, when I was well, I'm still a director, but when I was looking for programs and furthering my education, did you guys think about when you put together your program about the business side of education? Because a lot of directors, right, they typically are really great teachers. They get promoted up the ladder. They're great. They're great at the education piece, but now they're faced with budgets and marketing and all the other pieces. So does your program address that as well?
So we do on a few different levels. Ultimately, we would love to build a leadership development program that infuses the business aspect to the leadership. And I always say that, early childhood leadership is different than K-12, different than other
Hmm.
industries for a lot of different reasons. So there's the leadership component, which is, how to coach people, how do you hold them accountable, how do you motivate them? And then there's this business aspect that not everyone understands. So meshing those together is important. We offer professional development around this area. We do a lot with financial literacy, believe it or not. We have
I believe it.
owners, people who aspire to be owners, and we have a wonderful financial literacy professional development series that talks about if your goal is to own and operate your own program, these are the things that you need to have in place financially to be able to do that. So, yes, we infuse it. And then we're lucky because some of our partners, specifically Delaware State University, just started an associate's degree program that is entrepreneurial inspired. So, at the end of that program, the goal is for you to have a business plan in early childhood, either as a family child care provider or center based owner, to open up your own program. And that was very important for us. And when we're advising students, we say, if this is your ultimate goal, this is the program and we can support you going there. So, yes, I would say, though, that there is so much opportunity in this area for everyone in early childhood to have a piece of the pie, because that's truly what's missing. If you are a great teacher, people assume you're going to be a great administrator,
Mhm.
and that does not always happen. So leadership coaching, I think, is important. I do think we can take that from K-12. They have done that pretty well, I think, in
Mhm.
growing their principals and superintendents. We
Mhm.
can take elements from that and make it our own, but I do think that leadership coaching is essential for our workforce, and it doesn't exist. So that's an area that we are exploring, and we are hoping to, really think through what the future could be.
Yeah, and you guys are doing a great job. And and the reason I ask these questions is really because that's just has been my experience. So here in Rhode Island, we have great programs, but as an owner, I enrolled in some of the programs, and they were paid through Teach, and I was like, gosh, this isn't really what I need as a childcare owner for the business side. So I ended up going over to Charter Oak, who was very smart and put together a early childhood leadership and administrative course, and it touched on management, it touched on financials, it touched on leadership, it touched on a lot of those things. And I guess I think it's so important because had I not done that and not gone through like the 10,000 small business program, when COVID happened, I'm not sure that my business would have survived if I had not had that training experience and expertise. In our state, I was like one of the first childcare programs to get PPP money,
Hmm.
almost immediately. But because I had all my paperwork together, all my stuff was together, it wasn't luck. And I had just graduated out of that program. So that's why I bring it up, because I want the folks that are listening to understand that yes, you can do all the educational pieces, and become a really
Hmm.
excellent educator, but there is two sides to this coin, and I want you to be successful, and that's why I bring it up. And so programs like this that are really, being innovative and saying like, what can we take? What's the best practices from all of these different educational bodies, and how do we make it so that it works for ECE specifically?
Yeah.
So, thank you
Yes.
so much for all your hard work around that.
Oh, well,
Talk to me.
my
Yeah,
pleasure.
yeah. No, I really do appreciate when states, take these initiatives. I really do. I think that's one of the things I just enjoy about this podcast is getting to talk to educators and folks throughout the country, because wow, the things that we can really learn from each other. I sit on a lot of boards and I can say, hey, this is what they're doing in Delaware. This is what they're doing in Florida, And so the more that we all collaborate and talk and have these conversations, the stronger we're going to be as a field. So, so thank you for, taking the charge here. But as you talk to directors, what are the things that you're hearing on the ground are their biggest challenges?
Staffing. And I say that because we can't seem to escape it, right? There are times in this industry where staffing, it's ebbs and it flows, and it seems like we've been ebbing a lot, right? Like Finding people is hard. When you do find them, do they stay? And I always say to directors, tell me about your program. Why are you having retention issues or recruitment issues, right? What are you offering? And first always people want to go to salary, right? I'm offering this, amount of dollar per hour. And that's important, but a compensation package is a package. So are there other things that you're offering? We have programs that offer benefits, some don't. We have some that are getting state funds to do pre-K, some that aren't. We have some programs that are participating in other grants the state has, others aren't, and it gives them more or less flexibility. But I think what I'm hearing the most, not think, what I know I'm hearing the most is staffing. However, directors are saying that the pool of people now is different because of this program. We basically have removed any sort of barrier in place to get your CDA, your associates or bachelors. So we are infusing the pool of applicants with higher qualified people. So they're starting to see that. And we've been in we've been in this thing now for almost 3 years. So people are finally starting to see the benefit.
Yeah.
We just graduated over 200 CDAs last year. We're going to do the same thing this year in June. That's 400 people with a CDA that Delaware did not have 2 years ago, right? So they're seeing that there is an influx in people, but the workforce is savvy and they are looking around and they're saying, I can go here and work at Chick-fil-A and make $15 an hour, probably close to 20 now, or I can do this and make less. So I think directors continuously have a hard job in trying to explain the benefits package, right? You work at Chick-fil-A, you're working nights and weekends, right? Childcare is a Monday through Friday, right? More kind of traditional hours, right? It allows you to do X, Y, and Z. And then they have to kind of fill in the gaps on the other benefits, right? That they offer. But that's what we see. We see what we're hearing is that directors are constantly trying to figure out the churn and the turn, right? They're also seeing an influx in people retiring or getting out of the field because they've been in it for so long. So now we have to think about how do we keep that wave of people coming in? Where is the pipeline? We do a lot of work with high schools, which is challenging because when you're going to high school, maybe you're working part-time, then you graduate, then you got to get focused on your career. And some people will continue to work in the field, others won't. But we have to think about a pipeline of people so we can kind of decrease that churn. But it's staffing, and I'm sure it's no shock to you. It's staffing and it's recruiting people. That's getting a little bit better, but it's retaining them with all of the, various challenges that comes in working in this field, right? It's not easy.
Yeah.
And it should be rewarded compensation benefits, like our peers in K-12. So it's a constant battle to say, if you want to work with young children, here's some options for you, and you have to make your own choices. But it's staffing. It's always staffing.
Yeah. What gives you hope about the future of early childhood education?
I took a deep breath because yesterday was Delaware's Early Childhood Advocacy Day, and we had legislators and we had advocates, obviously, and we had just great partners kind of talking about what's the potential, what progress have we made, what's the potential opportunity. And like I think most people in this field, I'm trying to stay focused on what is an opportunity and not get derailed by things that are happening at the federal level and things that I can't control. What gives me hope is that when I see 200 plus people getting their credential or their degree because they feel that it's important for them as an industry, as a professional to be recognized, that's what gives me hope. It gives me hope to see, we have a scholar who was in her 70s and never thought she was going to get a college degree. And she finally finished last year. And she's still working in a program. And now she feels like she's been reinvigorated because now she has this degree. That's what keeps me alive, and the hope that through programs like mine and others, we can continue to uplift this field and give them a voice, and show to the rest of the world how important and essential this work is. And I have to go on the positive, right? I have to think about, this is what keeps people going, is this acknowledgement and this completion of something that they maybe thought they couldn't do.
Yeah, I love that story about the older woman because that's me. I'm that older woman. I'm like, I always say it doesn't matter when you bloom when you bloom, you know. What do you think some of the biggest misconceptions that people think about workforce development for early childhood education?
Well, again, no shock to you or probably your listeners, but this concept of babysitting, daycare, right?
Mhm.
We don't take care of days, we educate children, right? It's this constant push and pull on the work that we're doing. And especially for my infant toddler educators, and being an infant toddler educator, I can say this, right? It's interesting how we have these differences even in our own field. If you're an infant toddler teacher, you're viewed differently as a preschool pre-K teacher, and then we're all viewed differently than our K-12 counterparts. So I think it's this constant reminder of the work that we're doing in birth to five, and how important that the research and the brain development is, and the effects it has on children as they go into kindergarten, as they enter elementary, and all the way to high school graduation and college graduation. We have years and years of studies and research that shows a quality early education experience is going to give you, the person, that much more benefit, leverage, opportunity over a peer who hasn't. If we could just get people to fund that, that would be, that's always our biggest challenge. But, I think people understand it more now, and especially when it falls into their own personal lap, right? When you've got people who are making decisions who can't find childcare, let alone quality childcare, but they call and someone
Mhm.
says, "We have a 3-year waiting list. Oh, you have an infant, good
Mhm.
luck. Like, we don't have any openings." Then it starts to become an issue, right? That has to
Yeah.
hit
Uh,
them kind of, personally. And then people start advocating for it. So
yeah.
I think we continuously have to fight this misconception that we're not educated, we're not valued, we're not performing an educational service to children. It's a constant issue. Teachers are not teachers in kind of the public's view. So it's the work of you and me and other people in this field to keep elevating and saying this work is equally as important, if not more important, than what's happening in the cage sector.
Yeah. And I love that the conversations are happening now. And they've been
Mhm.
happening, honestly, since the pandemic when, the folks who went to work were the the early childhood educators, and a lot of schools,
Yes,
were distance learning, but the rest of us we were there
that's
and,
right.
the world kind of was like, we can't do it
In
without
the
you. We're like,
trenches. That's
we
right. In
know.
the trenches, usual, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So as we start to wrap it up, what is there maybe a couple strategies if somebody isn't lucky enough to live in your state and have a program like this? What are some strategies that maybe directors could use, or resources they could find, or something to help them keep hope and keep pushing along?
Yes. If you're not lucky enough to live in Delaware, you could move. We're always looking to add to our population. Small state, small but mighty. I think directors need to know what exists in their state. And I am shocked to find that many directors, even in Delaware, we've been doing this for almost 3 years, and there isn't a meeting or a gathering or a Zoom where I find myself explaining to people about this program like we just opened yesterday. So I think that we have a sort of a giant footprint out there, but there are still programs that don't know that we offer tuition, technology, coaching, stipends. I think directors in their state, they have to know what the state offers. Do they have an early learning office? Is it part of their Department of Ed? They have to know where things kind of fall. And believe me, that's a challenge in itself to know what program is here and there. Once they know that and they know the resources, then it's up to them to think about how they can get their staff involved, right? Is there info sessions? Are there brochures? Can the program send you things? We offer on-site career advisement. Our career advisement team, they hit the pavement and they are going to places during nap time, during lunchtime, on weekends, at night. We meet people where they are, right? If you need us to come at 7 o'clock, we're going to be there. So finding out what programs are available and then advocating for different things. So one of our big projects we had to do was to get all of our higher ed institutions to agree to articulate the CDA for 12 college credits. This had been 10 plus years in the works. That's a whole other podcast. But we finally did it. So now, if you have a CDA, you can go to our community college, you can go to any of our state colleges, anything in Delaware, and you'll get 12 program credits. You are one semester in to your associates or bachelor's.
That's
We did
awesome.
that because we heard from the field that that was going to be a way to open up this door. So I think directors need to be aware of what other states are doing. They need to be able to ask their state, how could we do this? We need to do this. And then they also have to be, we all have to be loud and proud about asking where funding is going, how decisions are made about funding, and what are some advocacy efforts that your state can participate in so that you could bring a program like this or the beginning of a program like this to your state. I just think it's about education and being knowledgeable about what exists. Because again, I am shocked to hear people that live in this state and they're like, what? What is this? What are you doing? All of my staff could go. Yes, all of your staff are eligible. So it's just knowing, and things are changing quickly. So
Mm.
having a contact and making sure they can connect, I think, is the number one piece of advice I would give.
Yeah, that's great advice. I'll piggyback on that. If you're in a state and the particular thing you need doesn't exist, maybe you make it. Maybe you make it happen, right? Or you find out who can make it happen, and you get a group of you together and you say, "We have this idea, just like you did. We have this idea. Let's work it out. How can we help? How can we promote it? And let's find the funding, whatever." But you have to take initiative.
You
Yeah,
do.
you have
And if
to.
I could just
Yeah,
add, I thought about
yeah.
this. So when I was working in higher ed, we had a local Head Start program approach us and they said, we have 20 people who need to get a degree to meet federal requirements. And I said, great. And they said, but the problem is they don't have transportation. They can't get to the university. They're working all day. And I said, okay, let's be solutions oriented here, right? Why do they have to come to us? We will go to them. So it was this innovative idea, right? Not even innovative, right? But it was so innovative at the time that why do you have to come onto campus to be enrolled in the program? We will go to one of your centers that are locally connected. You all can get there and we'll bring the school to you. And we did that program for years. And we saw a huge amount of those Head Start providers, educators get their degree. If the director had not come to me and said, I got these people, but how do we do it? We wouldn't have thought about it. So I 100% agree. If you want something to happen, ask, right? It's kind of like the first idea in a job interview is just show up, right? Like just ask, and you'd be surprised what people could do if you give them ideas and bring opportunities to them.
Yeah. So for folks who want to, maybe folks who live in your state, we're going to give them the contact info. And then folks who don't live in the state, who maybe are struggling, maybe somebody's out there can reach out to you and say, hey, how do we, get something like this in our state? So give folks a little bit of your contact info. Where do they find more about you? That kind of thing.
Absolutely. I am always willing to talk to any of my kin, as I say. Anyone who's doing this work, has done this work, wants to do this work. We need to connect. And I am happy and just thrilled to share what we've done. And hopefully that could help you do what you might want to do in your state. So the easiest way, number one, is to check out our website, uw.edu. You can also search Early Childhood Innovation Center, Delaware, and it should pop up in any of your search engines. That'll give you a rundown of our staff, our mission, our vision, our programs, our incentives. We have a great website that is chock full of information. If you want to connect with me personally, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, Kimberly Krzanowski, or you can easily email me, KKRZAN as in Nancy, OWSKI at desu.edu, or again, just Google me and you can probably find my email in that way too. But happy to talk to directors, providers, institutions, systems. My lofty goal is to take the ECIC and hopefully eventually make it a national program. I think that Rhode Island could have an ECIC. I think Maryland could have an ECIC, California, and states have similar programs. What makes our program different is that we have aligned everything under one roof. We've made unapologetic, right, goals and promises to the workforce. And that's what drives us. If it doesn't work for our workforce, we're just not going to do it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom, your resources, your energy. Thank you for all that you're doing for our community. It really means a lot because sometimes when you're in the field, you feel like sometimes like, does anybody care about us? Is it, it does sometimes feel that way. So it feels nice to see other folks really say, no, we're going to be a voice for you too. Because sometimes you feel like you're the only voice. Hello, my
There's many
podcast. I
voices.
just sit here talk to myself. So yeah, yeah. So I think that we'll get much further along when we all work together. So to my
Absolutely.
listeners, thank you as always. Thank you so much for tuning in. You're listening to the Childcare Directors Chair podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe. See you tomorrow. Bye. Thank you.